Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We're glad you're here. And my guests today are Haigh and Alicia Visser, and they're from Down Under in Australia. And I'm so glad you're here to um, help me learn more about the heart and brain harmony and the coherence that we need, right, between our heart and our mind, our brain. And so I'm just going to read your biography here a little bit so that everyone can know more about you. And so Ali and Alicia are founders of At The Treehouse.com.au, and they're heart math certified trainers. Their work blends science and spirituality. Their work blends science and spirituality, drawing from psychology, neuroscience, quantum physics, and the intelligence of the heart to create real embodied transformation. Ali Haigh and Alicia Visser are the co-founders, again, of At The Treehouse and the creators of the transformative heart-brain harmony and Embody Your Light programs. They have a combined 30 years of experience in psychology, nervous system regulation, and energetic healing, and they support individuals and families to move beyond survival mode and live from coherence, wholeness, and soul alignment. And their contact information on their website and Facebook and LinkedIn are below, that you all can contact them afterwards. And so again, Ali and Alicia, I'm just glad to meet you here almost in person. And I've been looking forward to our visit. And so I like to ask people to tell their story. Like, how did you come to do the work you're doing now?
Okay. Well, Carla, just on behalf of Alicia and I just want to say thank you so much for this opportunity. We are so grateful and it's such a pleasure, and we're really looking forward to the amazing conversation that unfolds. So really, our journeys together, Alicia and I have known each other since university days, which is many decades now. We won't go into the number of years.
Yes, let's not do that.
And we always knew we were going to work together in some respects. And so it's really been such a beautiful journey of our own friendship, of how we've grown together in this work and really burst this incredible community together. But we also have very different stories that got us to this point too. You know, there was a time in my life where most of my life I believed that I was really broken, and I was broken beyond repair. You know, I grew up with chronic stress, and by 14, I was diagnosed formally with depression and anxiety, and I was medicated, and I was told that I needed fixing, and the answers were outside of me. And by 21, after a long hospital admission, you know, I was told that I wouldn't work full time, I would never sustain a relationship or meaningful friendships. And that's what I intrinsically kind of imprinted at the time. And I believed them that was my identity. And so I went on this path to try and fix myself with therapy and medication, and I became a forensic psychologist. And instead of finding that healing that I was desperately looking for, I just felt even more disconnected. And so behind the scenes, you know, I did all the right things where, you know, I got the mortgage and I got the job and I kept working up the corporate ladder and I kept doing all the things. But behind the scenes, I was really falling apart, and I was really disconnected from who I was and from my soul. And then my physical health started declining. I had neurological issues, chronic fatigue, you know, chronic glandular fever, like the list just was ridiculous. But my nervous system basically spent its entire life in stress, in survival mode. And it took its toll on my physical health because my body was never in repair mode. It was always in survival. So I wasn't self-healing. And eventually I couldn't even care for my children. And it was a really significant moment for me when I realized that my daughter was mirroring my stress, that her nervous system was becoming a copy of my nervous system, and that my pain was becoming hers. And we started doing this doctor shopping with her in the same way that I did, trying to find answers for all of these issues that people were telling me that she had. And I didn't see those issues. I just saw the brightest, most intelligent, most incredibly loving, joyful spark in my child. And people just kept telling me that that wasn't the case. And so in that moment, it was like, that was my awakening. And I knew that something had to change, and not just for me, but for her. It was her that was guiding me towards a really, really deep change. And that was the moment that really cracked me open. And I started praying to anything higher than me, the universe, the angels, whatever it was, some higher power that knew more than I did, to show me. And I just was like, this can't be it. Like, this just can't be it. This level of stress and survival cannot be what I was here to do. Like, it just can't be. And so then the answers started coming, the synchronicities, the move to the Sunshine Coast, on the east coast of Australia. I bought the treehouse. But ultimately, the big shift was the discovery of heart-brain coherence, and the synchronicities around how we were led to that work was really profound. But when I rewired my nervous system, and when I activated the energy between my heart and brain, everything changed. It really was the missing piece in all of the things that we learnt as psychologists. My body healed, my mind found peace. I became connected into my energy and my soul and my intuition. I became guided. And then the profound thing was that my children started healing, and my whole family system started healing. And we're no longer in survival. We're just completely thriving. We're in flow. We have ease and grace and miracles. And it's really profound. And I guess my real take-home message is that amongst it all, if we can do it, I think our message is that, and if members of our community are really transforming their own lives in this way too, then anyone listening that feels touched by this story can do the same thing. Yeah.
Right.
Your turn.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do I follow that? So yeah, our stories are slightly different, but kind of the same. So as mentioned about, like, I'm a clinical psychologist by trade, have been for more years than I care to remember. So a couple of decades now, and I've worked in the mental health field pretty much that entire time, in the therapeutic space. And during that time, I got into the field because I really wanted to help people. I really wanted to make a difference. I wanted to, I wanted to guide people to actually have, better lives, and to teach them the things that they actually were missing. And, yes, I was able to do that on the journey, but over time, because of the type of work I was doing, the environments that I was in, there was times I worked, for police, for defence. I was on 24-hour on call. I was, in a state of seeing, 10 clients a day, getting up at 3 a.m. and responding to, random crisis calls. So over time, very similar to Ali, I ended up in a very, dysregulated nervous system response. And for me, like, I knew all the tools. And I say this, I was one of those psychologists that, I didn't just say, I practice what I preach. I didn't just say, you do it and I'm not going to do it. Anything I actually said, I gave other people to do, I do myself. But I was doing all the self-care. I was doing all the cognitive reframing. I was doing all the, behavioral activity, all the things that I knew as a psychologist to actually help me to manage my stress and respond, as effectively as I could. But despite doing all of those things, I was exhausted. I was burnt out. I got to a point where I had chronic fatigue. I was having headaches every single day. Migraines, my, body, like I remember, not being able to get out of bed because of chronic back pain, do a little turtle crawl as you try and get out of bed in the morning. My body was essentially responding to the stress state that it was in, and it was screaming at me and saying, this is not okay and this is not right. But I was functioning. I was one of the highest performers in my team, and I was doing all the work, and I was, climbing up the corporate ladder, as Ali refers to. I had the house, I had the kids, I had all the things, but I wasn't present for my kids, and I wasn't present for my family or my partner in the way that I actually knew.
Or yourself.
Or myself in the way that I actually knew I needed to be. And I remember having a bit of a light bulb moment myself, where someone actually said, this isn't normal, but at the time I didn't know it wasn't normal, because this is what we've actually been told. This is like, stress is normal. This is how we live life. This is the cost of success. This is just kind of how it is. And I got so caught up in that trap that I didn't even see how bad it had actually gotten. And luckily for me at the time, Ali was living at my house, and she was going through and learning all the things that she was learning. And she had the drop-in around heart-brain coherence, and she introduced me to the practice. And essentially when she took me through that, and when that came into my life, it really was that light bulb moment. When I started implementing the technique, when I started to see how it actually shifted my emotional state, my physiological state, how I could turn up for my children, how I could turn up for my and the changes in them in terms of how they would respond, the entire energy of my household. And when I started to see that unfold, it really was that missing piece. All the things I had learned as a psychologist and were trying to put in place, I could actually now do those things in a way that actually mattered, in a way that actually helped me change my life. And it wasn't just the regulating of the nervous system. I mean, that's key, and I'll probably talk about that a little bit more today. But what I really learned through heart-brain coherence was it actually shifted my frequency. I was living so much in stress, I didn't even remember what true joy or true happiness or true peace actually felt like. And through heart-brain coherence, I was actually able to reconnect with that. And when I did, that's when the magic started to happen. And I could actually see all of the programs that I'd been running subconsciously throughout my life, the perfectionism, the people-pleasing, the over-responsibility, all of those things that I was kind of, aware of, but really couldn't see how they were actually playing out in my life, and also how to actually change them and get out of those patterns. And that's the gift that heart-brain coherence gave me. I could see the patterns, but I could also then change them. I got my power back. And when I did that, and for me, I think I was so much in this, it's the system, or it's the culture, or it's the organization, or it's the really crappy boss. And look, I had some really, really crappy bosses, to be perfectly honest. But when I shifted my frequency and I could see all of those things, I also saw that I had a choice. And I got my power back. And that was, a gift is the only way to describe that.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you, ladies, for sharing. I love hearing people's stories, and so thank you. I know sometimes it can be difficult to share them, but it's victory, right? You have found victory. Yeah. So I guess my question is, I've heard of the HeartMath Institute, and I've listened to some of their things, but it's been a number of years since I kind of learned about it. Could you kind of go into now a little bit more detail about the HeartMath thing, but also the the coherence and the nervous system regulation, however you want to proceed, or however those are all tied together in how you approach them.
Do you want to?
You can do this one.
Okay. So the Heart Math Institute is, I guess, the governing, governing body sounds so serious. It's not. It's a magical institution. It's a research institution, and a very magical place led by, beautiful heart-led people. We were, I guess, attracted to their work. Obviously, when we found Heart-Brain Coherence, and we were attracted to their work because they were very science-based. Like, we're both scientists. We, as psychologists in our background, we're a little bit geeky in that way. We like to understand how things happen and why things happen the way they do. So we're always trying to understand the science behind things. And that's what also really attracted us to the Heart Math Institute, because they have been researching heart-brain coherence and its impact for over 30 years. And, so it's very well documented, it's evidence-based, and it's all about understanding the biology on one level, and the energetic as well, in relation to how the heart actually is, running the show. So heart-brain coherence is actually the synchronization between the heart and the brain. So when the heart is sending incoherent messages to the brain, your system is out of whack. Your system is essentially incoherent. And when our system is incoherent, all of the messages, all the harmony that should actually happen in our systems, in our bodily systems, doesn't occur. It's the opposite that happens. So, but when we actually are able to get into a state of coherence, and our heart is actually sending coherent signals to the brain, and our brain is lighting up in this beautiful, harmonious way, then, all of those natural processes that are designed in our body to keep us in perfect balance and harmony and operating exactly the way we're meant to, in that, state of peace and regeneration, because our body is designed to be to heal, to essentially to be a perfect system. It is actually extremely intelligent. It is designed to operate at its optimal functioning. The challenge is us.
So the program. The challenge is the program.
The challenge is the program.
So what would be a example then of an incoherent message that the heart, because you had said if the heart sends incoherent messages, so what would be an example of that?
So an example of that would be, when you're a good example is when you're in a state of stress and arousal. So your heart will actually send, it's a combination of the heart rate variability. So it's actually the spaces in between your heartbeats. Now, when your heart is essentially beating in an incoherent way, which happens when we're under pressure or stress, or in that state of survival, it will actually send that message to the amygdala in our brain. Our amygdala is our emotional center. And that amygdala will get that incoherent message, and then it will actually send, it'll create the emotion. So it'll create the emotion of stress, or it'll create the emotion of anger, or it'll create the emotion, whatever's associated with that incoherent heart rate variability in your heart. So they can actually measure it. So different, emotions will have different,
frequencies.
Rhythms. Yes. But all of which are, if you look at it on a graph, it's kind of like this jagged, incoherent line, rather than this nice, beautiful sine wave of, rhythmic pattern with nice variability between it. It's kind of like, you can see that.
Mm-hmm.
And when when your heart's sending that incoherent message, as I said, the amygdala releases those, emotions into your system,
stress,
and it releases the hormones of stress. So every emotion is associated with a particular neurochemical signature, and that neurochemical signature. So, for example, stress is your cortisol, your adrenaline, and that is what is released into the system. When those are released into our system, we are in a state of disrepair, essentially, because we are in, it's degenerative in terms of, particularly when it's long term, because that's the challenge, right? All of these things are great. If I need to have if I need to have
If you're about to be attacked by a tiger,
you want to be able to run.
Response to kick in.
Yes.
You want to have those hormones of stress to actually support you to move out of that danger. Yeah. And the idea is that after the danger is removed, or your perception of danger is removed, or stress, your body moves back into its window of tolerance, and you move back into your parasympathetic nervous system, you move back into coherence, and then you can start to self-regenerate again and move into that self-healing state.
Yeah, so it's meant to be this nice, perfect balance. We respond when we've actually got a stressor in our environment, we go back to normal. The challenge is that what happens over time is that if we are continually in a state of stress and we actually don't come back to our window of tolerance or back into that parasympathetic state, or we kind of come back for a short period of time, and then we, go back up again, or we, bounce along the surface of, when we do that, we don't actually get those periods of time of regeneration and rest and repair. And what also happens over time is that signal becomes our baseline, because essentially your heart becomes trained. It's like it's sending that same signal over and over again to your brain to create this incoherent, signal to then create these, particular emotions that, those emotions become our norm. That signal is actually just reinforced over and over again. That becomes our network, that becomes our baseline. So what heart-brain coherence actually does is when we actually focus our attention on our heart, where attention goes, energy flows. So we actually start to put the energy into our heart. When we do that, one, we drop our mind out of our monkey mind, out of our brain, into that focal point of the heart. Then we breathe deep and slow. So when we breathe deep and slow, what we actually are sending into our system is a signal of safety. The deeper and slower the breath, the more safe we feel. So it's also telling our body, telling our heart that we are actually in a place of safety. And then the other piece of heart-brain coherence is actually starting to learn to bring in elevated emotions, not from anything outside of you, not from the new car, not from the new iPhone, not from that new relationship.
Because they're ultimately dopamine fixes. They're not actually a genuine, sustained, elevated emotion of those high frequency states of joy and love and peace. And so ultimately it's about learning over time, and it doesn't happen straight away. It took me quite a long time, many months of retraining my nervous system for me to be able to experience an elevated emotional state, just because I exist, just because I'm here. But it's that retraining of the nervous system response into elevated emotions that actually then creates a whole cascade of
regenerative neurochemicals.
You're neurochemicals, biochemical processes that move your body and energetic systems into homeostasis and healing and balance and connection.
Yeah. And when you do this over and over and over again, essentially you're retraining your baseline. So initially, as Alex said, it can be hard to get to those more elevated emotions. So what you're essentially initially training yourself with heart-brain coherence is to get into that parasympathetic, just get down into that piece of safety, of calm, of ease that, for so many of us has actually been, missing. And when we start to send that signal, when we go into those emotional states, even a state of, just basic calm will create a coherent signal to the brain, releasing those alternative neurochemical, pathways and retraining that signal. And the more we do that, that then becomes our new baseline. And then what we find is we
become addicted. So instead of being addicted to the hormones of stress, we become addicted to love and joy. I remember one of our community members in our program turned around and said one day, he was like, be careful, if you do this program, you might just wake up one morning and be really happy just because you exist.
Yeah, that's the caveat. It's like, I'll take that caveat, thank you. But it does take time. It took time for our bodies and our systems to actually get into this place of, survival. But when we actually start to shift our baseline and we can actually, be in that state of coherence more often and maintain it, then we actually start to operate from that place of coherence. So rather than being in that state of, incoherence and essentially that, state of stress, we, in terms of, I think of, for my kids, back in the day, the kids getting ready for school and not, having those things that they were meant to do before they actually got to get out the door, those things were enough to, set me off, and I'd be impatient and I'd be, sharp, and I'd be, responding in, probably not the really nice mummy way. I wasn't yelling and screaming, but I didn't feel good in my system, and I didn't, and it wasn't nice or pleasant for them. And it was like a rush and a pressure. But that was because I was operating from an incoherent nervous system. When, now, I can't even talk my kids don't actually understand what a cranky mummy is anymore, because now when we respond, it's not that I'm, absolutely perfect. We do sometimes, have our moments, but now if I'm activated in any way, I have something I can return to. I can actually bring myself back into a state of coherence. And when I move myself back into that state of coherence, that's actually when I'm able to respond to my children from a place of calm, from a place of understanding, from a place of choice. Because I'm not I'm not on autopilot.
I think for me that also, being in a state of coherence and a high state of coherence is equivalent for me to the flow state. You start to, things that used to be seen as challenges, you just start to move through things with ease and grace because you don't have that nervous system activation when things happen.
It's just not irritating.
It's not. And then what happens when you're in coherence is you have a greater access to mental clarity, to a greater access to your intuition. Your memory improves, your sleep improves, your physiological health improves, your relationships improve, and everything in life just starts to get a whole lot better. And then what happens is that as your frequency rises, like we are so connected to our partners and our children and our parents and the people around us. Just by being in a coherent state, it sparks a shift. This frequency is contagious. The electromagnetic field around our heart expands when you're in high coherent state up to 3 meters. That's actually only how far we can measure it at the moment. They do think it's infinite. When we're in this state, we start to become a ripple. This is how the lighthouse begins. And we don't need to be running around telling people to be less stressed or to wake up or to be better or to do anything. All you have to do is be coherent and just allow the energy to shift and support those around you, because it is a loving intelligence. And so there's all these really profound ripple effects of what happens. And we see this time and time again with people in our community. Then they start manifesting from a place of coherence. Then the job opportunities start coming in. Then the business flow starts happening without people even needing to do advertising. It's this incredible flow state that starts to magnify people's deepest desires of what they came here to do. It's also a way of being able to navigate the challenges with more ease and grace and with more awareness and more compassion for yourself, but also for the people around you. And we now have this big, beautiful community. I think one of the really profound things that we are really, really proud of is actually how we support the integration and the sustainment of our own coherence and our community's coherence. And as psychologists, one of the biggest challenges when people come in and they are looking to seek change from when they're in that survival response or they're feeling quite stressed, is you can give them all these tools, but then when they leave your office, they can have aha moments in the office, but when they leave the office, implementing them at home, sustaining that change at home, or doing the tools and practices can be challenging. So what we've set up is what our community has affectionately now called the Boom Room, where we open a Zoom room up to 6 times a day. And I think we're going to have to extend the number of times to suit more time zones around the world, because our community is going global. But we come in together and we practice heart-brain coherence together. And what happens is this really incredible thing. You know, every cell of the trillion cells in our bodies has an electromagnetic field. Our heart has an electromagnetic field. Our hearts have neurons in them, and that means our hearts think, feel, and remember. And this incredible thing happens with that synchronization of our electromagnetic fields of our hearts, and our hearts all start to synchronize in together when we breathe together and move into coherence. And so what happens is there's this incredible amplification of energy. And so when we breathe by ourselves, it is nothing in comparison to when we breathe together as a community. And we're seeing people's scores. So we use biofeedback. So one of the things that when I first started doing this for, 6 or 8 months, I thought I was doing really well. And then I finally jumped on a biofeedback monitor of the HeartMath Institute and measured my coherence, and I wasn't even close to being anywhere near coherent. And
that's the key about understanding the difference between coherent and just breathing.
Being in a relaxed state is not necessarily the same thing as being coherent. Being coherent is actually you have this supreme level of mental clarity, and your heart, the energy of your heart is open and it's moving, and you feel your fields getting bigger, and you feel the energy and you feel the ripples. It's a really profound, blissful state when you get really highly coherent.
The HeartMath Institute has created a biofeedback device to actually help to measure your coherence, so you can actually get that feedback in real time.
Yeah, and getting that feedback, there's things that happen in your brain that supports that development of moving you into a place of coherence and sustained change over time in a much more quicker and more effective way. So we're all in this Boom Room together. We're all on our monitors. We're all getting their super high coherence scores. And we do different techniques that help us access our intuition and all sorts of things. But the thing that has evolved recently through the community is one of the techniques is called the heart lock-in technique. And that's where you get super coherent, and then you synchronize our hearts together, and then we send energy to one person. And that then shifts the information in their fields into more wholeness, into healing, into whatever it is that their intention is for manifestation. And so we've now set up what we're calling a circle of coherence. And we do that multiple times a week, where we support our community members on their journey towards wholeness, because, we're not broken. But the thing that is so profound is how we're now measuring our coherence in these circles, and our community members' coherence is just going through the roof. And it's because they're opening their hearts to love in support of somebody else, in support of someone's child who's, one of our community members. We had her 2-year-old son. He'd been in hospital for the last 3 days with unknown seizures. And we had him in the center of our circle this week. And there was so much emotion and love, and in that room it was really quite a profound experience. Yeah. So
I would like to interrupt you, though, if you wouldn't mind. Why don't we pretend this is your boombox? We don't have the biofeedback gadgets or whatever, but we all have hearts and breath, and and there'll be more people watching than are watching live. And so please, if you don't mind, walk us through something.
We'd love that. Do you want to do it?
which technique do we want to do?
I think it's just the basic one.
Just the basic one?
Yeah. And we'll just put a little caveat in there and say the third step. So the 3 steps are really simple. You focus your attention on your heart, you breathe deep and slow, and then you bring in an elevated emotion. And I just want to put a caveat on there. You know, when we first started this practice, we had a lot of challenges bringing an elevated emotion. And so if that anyone listening, if that is you, that's so completely normal. And that is the result of the program that we're living in. And the idea with at that point would be just to focus on neutrality or calm. And that this isn't an overnight thing where we just, you know, it does take support and integration and practice. So I just don't want anyone feeling like they're not getting it right or they're judging themselves or anything like that. We just want to really normalize that experience for people.
All right. As we always say, let's breathe. I just invite everyone to just take a moment to settle in to their body. And focus your attention on your heart. It may help to place your hand over your heart, just to anchor your attention there. And breathing a little bit deeper and a little bit slower than usual. Just finding a rhythm that's right for you. Breathing in and out of your heart space. Where your mind goes, energy flows. And now bring in an elevated emotion, a sense of peace, joy, love, gratitude. Or even simply neutrality or calm. And if your mind wanders, that's okay. Just bring your focus back to your heart. Back to your breath. Breathing deep and slow. And back to the elevated emotion. that sense of calm. And when you're ready, turn your focus back to the room. Ready to bring this coherence with you into the day.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, Tala.
It reminds me of, it's kind of so often because of our busy lives or, habitual being in the fight or flight, it's like we think we're calm, or I should say, I think I'm calm. Or sometimes I feel calm, but if you tune in, you feel that underneath, what do you call it? Like a car motor running that's still going when it should have been turned off, right? And then, but I was applying it to many times, like in meditation or other things. I've been told at different times, take 3 deep breaths, right? Belly breaths, and exhale slowly. And you can do it in different, hold it for 4, count for 4, hold it for 4, exhale for 8, or however the many different versions are. But it's like 3 times doesn't do it for me. I mean, sometimes it does, if I was calm going into it. But if I've been running around or having my mind full of other stuff, it's like 3 breaths isn't enough. I can't turn that motor off in 3 breaths.
Yeah.
And it really helps. I don't think of course I have felt those reactions in, like, going through your example here with us, the example of tuning into your heart, and then I call it connecting to the universe. And of course I'm part of the universe, so that's within me, so I'm feeling those I am emotions, love, joy, gratitude, curiosity, and wonder. And so I feel that many times, but I hadn't I guess systematically connected all those. That's really nice. It's very helpful.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience, Carla. And I think that what you've described is part of the journey that we went down ourselves. And I've been meditating for a really long time. I love meditation. We're students of Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. We are.
I was going to say, some of that reminded me. I thought when you guys were talking, it was like, Joe Dispenza has to be using part of this. And the other part was, as you're saying, in your boom room or connecting your hearts together, it's like, that's the power of 8.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So they're all drawing on different parts of this that have been very instrumental in my own life, or in my own inner healing journey, right?
Absolutely.
Looking to those people and learning from them.
Yeah, absolutely, us too. And Carla, I want to go back to that point that you mentioned about, taking 3 slow breaths is not enough, or even just that basic box breathing. And those kinds of techniques support our move to safety. It slows down, moves us into our parasympathetic nervous system. But as we mentioned before, that is not the same thing as coherence. This is really about moving into those elevated emotional states. You can't think your way into gratitude. You can't, that motor's running underneath. You can't just say to someone, go and do your affirmations and feel grateful. Go and journal and feel just joy just for the sake of it. Our ability to experience true frequency joy and peace requires a biochemical production, a neurochemical production of biochemical processes in our brain. We have to activate that. And the way that we activate that is through coherence, and it's through our heart. And so it's really that piece of retraining our nervous system out of that motor stress response into coherence, which creates those elevated emotional states. And it really is a profound feeling of bliss, of incredible compassion for self, for others. It is really a really beautiful place to live life from, as your baseline. And when you train your body and your heart into this, you can access these states really quite quickly. And this is the beauty of the boom room is that you might be on your lunch break at 12 o'clock and you might just jump in for 7 minutes, for 6 minutes of the 12 o'clock boom, reset your nervous system, and then go back to work. You might jump on at 8 p.m. just before you go to bed, and to reset your heart and your energy and your field just before you drift off to sleep, to support that subconscious reprogramming.
Or first thing in the morning.
Or first thing in the morning, so you make that decision about how you're gonna show up for the day,
and set that set that tone from the beginning.
Yeah.
And
I was going to say, we have a question in the chat. When you say concentrate on the heart, do you literally mean think on the heart or envision the heart? Or it's a good question. I mean, we're so in healing modalities, and we're so used to using phrases or something that often gets said, and not everyone can know what exactly.
No, it's a really good question. So for me, and that's, I guess, why I say, put the anchoring. It is about actually focusing on your actual heart and putting your attentional focus there. So, really feeling where it is in the body and giving that attentional focus to where it is in the body. That's why, sometimes I know when I start, I actually still do it, to be honest, just because I like the feeling of my hand over my heart, and that just really helps me continually anchor into that space. And the reason that's so important, and going back to that, the difference between heart-brain coherence and the breathing is because the heart is actually what's in control. Like, one of the biggest things that, really, shook us to the core when we first started doing this work was we were always told that the brain was the one in charge, right? The brain's running the show. You need to change the brain to change your life. And that's what we're taught in psychology. And it wasn't until we, started learning about heart-brain coherence and the science behind that we, found out that, the heart is its own little mini brain. It has, 40,000, neuronal connections. It, as Ali said before, it thinks, it feels, it remembers. So it's the one telling our brain what we should, how we should be feeling, how we should be experiencing, and
highway.
It's there's not, there's actually more information going from the heart to the brain than the brain to the heart. It's like a 9-way highway going up and only a 1-way highway going down. And when you realize that, you realize how important it is to actually focus on your heart and send your heart the message that you are safe and that you are, and sending that intention of the elevated emotion, so that it can, activate the brain, so it can synchronize, so it can actually send that chemical signature throughout your entire body.
And so when you're doing the practice, you are just quietening your mind and you're just bringing your attention inside your body into your heart space, and your mind becomes very still. So when it starts to get busy again, that means you've gone back up into the mind. So you're really anchoring your mind in your heart. And when you're in really high states of coherence, you pretty much have very minimal thought. And it becomes a real stillness. And that's why often I get my best downloads of information when I'm doing my practice, because there's a real stillness.
Do you think it's that same stillness basically that allows, like, so often in meditation or other things, it's like all of a sudden, bam, the purple or the white light at the third eye come in. Do you think that happens at that same time that you're hitting that coherence?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question. I think that people can have that stillness and those experiences in deep meditation, and they may not necessarily be in coherence. But, we practice coherence with our eyes open. I mean, or eyes closed, but it is more of a mental clarity, alert state that you're moving into a gamma state, like a higher brain state. And we practice this with our eyes open so that if we're feeling activated in the shops, we can stop and do it in the shops and no one will even know.
Nice. Yeah, very nice. What about, do you teach, to reach that higher frequency, like of the love, joy, gratitude, curiosity, and wonder? Like I learned from Dr. Sue Morter. I don't know if you've heard of her. She's a chiropractor that wrote the energy codes. And so she tells in her book, and I took a course from her, how to get to that space, right? So you can feel these, and it's like thinking of something that brings you joy, and then you kind of hold on to joy and go to the next emotion and then hold on. But so it wasn't something that I automatically knew how to do, but I could learn it. I mean, and I learned it, and now it's like all I have to do is turn my attention into the ether around me, right? Or through what's around me, not into it, right? And it's like, bam, I'm there, because that's what the universe is always operating at, right?
Yes. But also, Carla, you've put the work in to learn the new skill.
Oh, yes.
You've created the whole neural net around experiencing joy and love and wonder and awe, and you are now attuned to those frequencies, and that's a beautiful thing. Yeah. And I guess, we say this to, this is how I've rewired my brain without medication.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say, Carla, you mentioned initially, you might think of a particular, place or experience or, something that would bring you that state of joy or that state of love or that state of gratitude. And that's definitely somewhere, where we would start, particularly when people are new to this practice. Because as we said before, it can be it's an anchor. It's, you sometimes need to remember.
Yes, well, that's true. I mean, it's like many people, right, and like yourselves, and like me, or I'll speak just for myself, but in listening, it's like you keep going on and keep pushing yourself in your life because you think you should feel normal, but you don't. And it's like you go until you can't go anymore. And it's like from that place, that hitting bottom, to use an AA or Al-Anon phrase, it's like from that, you don't know who you are. You don't know what to do. You don't know why you do what you do. And so you start, right?
Yeah.
You start somewhere, and what makes the most sense to you at that moment. But having an example of how to start feeling those feelings that I hadn't felt for quite a long time was so very helpful for me.
Yeah, so that's definitely, so we've got a few like kind of tips and tricks that we use to really help people to start that process of really tuning into those emotions. The idea is that eventually, as you experience yourself, Carla, you start to just tune into the field and you go, I'm picking joy, I'm picking, gratitude.
Yes.
Miracles is my favorite.
Miracles is your favorite. and you can bring that in without a memory, without anything outside of you at all.
Yes.
But we all have to start from a particular place, and then it's about retraining. And then when we remember what that feels like, we can actually start to actually bring it into existence without anything outside of us. And it's just about retraining that network and retraining that energy. And I mean, we also do the other thing is the energetic work, where, you know, in terms of we also are trained systemic constellations facilitators as well. So we also bring some of that work into what we do to really help people to anchor in, you know, those elevated emotions and their future self frequencies. And that's another way that we help people to actually start to attune to that information in the field and grow those networks.
Yeah, nice. Nice. I'm going to see if I've asked all. This is because I was looking. I like to look over people's websites and, you know, to get if there's things I want to know more about or words I don't quite understand, then I figure, well, other people might want to know them too. And so a couple things. In one place, you'd mentioned quantum principles in addition to the neuroscience or so could you explain what part of this is that then?
Mm-hmm. Did you want to do it? I can
do it.
Okay. All right. So as I mentioned before, we're kind of, you know, we're very sciencey based. And when we started really diving deep into heart brain coherence and the work with heart maths, we became heart maths trainers. We learned all about the energetic field of the heart. And as Ali said, it just, you know, expands and expands and expands. It can only be measured, you know, 3 feet around us, but, you know, we know that it is the strongest magnetic field around us. And what we started to learn was, I guess, really how the heart is also a signal to the rest of the information of the field, and
it's
how it's an amplifier of our signal to the field. And so I guess as part of our journey, we actually started to really learn about, you know, quantum principles and quantum physics. We delved deep into, you know, Joe's work, you know, Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden, and we started to, I guess, really learn more about how energy works and really how fundamental the heart is, and how fundamental heart brain coherence is in terms of actually sending that clear broadcast signal into the field. So how we could actually combine that elevated emotion and that clear intention of, you know, whether or not it's what we're trying to manifest or our, you know, our intention for the day in terms of how we want to show up as our highest self in that moment, how we could actually use heart brain coherence as that foundation to really amplify that signal. So that's where we kind of, you know, started to really go down the rabbit hole of learning and delve really deep into understanding how the quantum fields works and how we are constantly in communication with it. How powerful our words, our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs, our subconscious, how, you know, through every single moment of every day, we are actually creating our reality, you know, through the information that we are feeding into, you know, I think back, you know, and that's one of the things that heart brain coherence, as I said earlier, was foundational for me in actually starting to really properly recognize those subconscious patterns that I was operating off, that I wasn't, you know, that were just, you know, driving. Yeah, it was driving every single choice I made, every single, you know, response I had, you know, what job I would take, you know, how I would respond to my children. Like it was all going on in the background, and it was feeding the information in my field. And then when you think it, you know, now when I think back on it, and I think, you know, why wasn't, you know, these things that I wanted actually coming to me, and why was I kind of stuck the way I was? And now when I look back on it, it was a combination of those subconscious programs going back, you know, underneath the surface, that were actually telling the field and instructing the field and creating my reality on a day-to-day basis. So then when, you know, as I said, you know, by learning heartbrain coherence, I've now been able to be really intentional about the information, the signals, the frequency that I actually send out to the field. And as a result, what I actually get back. And that's why, you know, our lives are so much different than what they were, you know, several years ago. And that's, you know, when we looked at all those pieces, that's why we put them all together, because they all, you can't separate one from the other.
Right.
You can't, you know, co-create with the universe from a state of survival.
Because you can. You just keep bringing chaos to you.
Actually, sorry, you are always co-creating with the universe. That is true. But yes, you will bring what you're putting out. Like that, you know, you will be putting out, you know, the survival response, and that's what you will be getting back as a result of that. So you can't, you know, you can't create. I guess you can't co-create intentionally from a state of survival because you're creating from a state of unawareness. So heartbrain coherence helps us be aware, so we can actually make a conscious choice about what we are feeding the field. And then also we can then change the subconscious, you know, programming. And that's a lot of the work that we do as well. You know, and that was the key from the psychology point. You know, I was trying to change the subconscious from a conscious mental level, and wondering why people weren't, you know, getting the long-term, you know, shifts and changes that, you know, psychology has taught us should happen, and they were going back to their default. It's like, well, they hadn't actually, you know, they hadn't reset their nervous system, and they hadn't been able to do so from a place of coherence, and they weren't aware of a lot of the programs that were underlying.
Oh, yeah, or definitely, or, you know, where they came from, you know, how they started. It's just, I guess the word that comes to me is dumbfounding. It's like to realize so many of the ways I interact, or, you know, have all those patterns all my life. It stems from a trauma, right? When I was 3 years old or something, and it's like I didn't even remember it, and yet you develop all these patterns that you're always interacting or being, you know, stirred up along those lines, and you don't know. It's sad. It's so wonderful that now more and more is being known, so that evidence or the information is out for people. But I was wondering, again, based on a comment in the chat there, the programs that you offer, like your boom room, is that a separate thing, or is that only available to people in your other programs that you offer? Or I could see you could sell a subscription just for the boom room.
Well, so Carla, great question. So we have our signature program, Heartbrain Harmony, which is a 3-month journey, which includes access to the boom room. And that really is a deep dive. But we've had so many people contact us and say, we really would love support from your boom room, but we're not quite ready to do the deep dive in the 3-month journey. So what we have done is we actually have a 6 or 7 day challenge coming up around the basics of heartbrain coherence. And if you complete that challenge, then you're able to, and that's at a very affordable price,
very low.
And you're able to then purchase a subscription to the boom room, and join our beautiful community and become a lighthouse and share your heart with the world. So that's coming soon in a few weeks, actually.
And so how would people, if they're, can you tell them how they could find that? Like if they listen to it now or in a few weeks or whatever, how are they going to find that program of yours? Will it be on your website? Will it be on your Facebook page?
Yeah, so definitely in the link to our group, our At The Treehouse group on Facebook, we will be posting all the information in there over the coming period. Also, if they jump onto our website and click on the subscribe button, they can join our mailing list and get all of the information there. And I believe the subscribe button's on the homepage. It should be up the top. Yes? Yeah.
Okay, very good. And I had one more question here. How did you come up with the name At the Treehouse, or what does it symbolize?
That's a really good question. So when I moved to the Sunshine Coast, I was guided intuitively to buy a treehouse. So I actually live in a treehouse. It's this really beautiful timber pole home on the side of a mountain in a rainforest on the sunny coast. And the beginning of this journey was actually within 2 weeks of moving in here. I was just previous to that, I'd pulled my kids out of school because their nervous systems needed a break, just the same as mine did. And within 2 weeks, I had other people's children here. And so I started running homeschooling programs where I taught children heart-brain coherence and about energy and accessing their intuition and all of the things. So that's
all
where
the important things.
all of the important things in life that and you know, I had kids here who were fresh out of school with quite dysregulated nervous systems, and after a period of time their parents would be coming to me saying, my kids doesn't have any refusal in the mornings and they're sleeping at night and they are going to the bathroom every day and they're eating again and their spark is coming back. And then they'd come to me and they'd say, well, the challenge is my kid comes home so well regulated and happy, but they're coming home to an environment where I'm still like losing the plot over spilling the milk and not, you know, being late for work and all of the stress that we experience. So that's when we moved into working together on building the adult program. And so we may change our name in the next little period of time. That's sort of on the cards, but because At the Treehouse is was very much built around homeschooling programs for children. We will be launching very soon a teen program online and also a program for younger children online. So that's something we're super excited about.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Good for you. Yeah, awesome. Well, is there I guess one more question. You said you use a biofeedback app like in the Boom Room, or probably just for everybody in your programs to have one. So what type of app is it? Or
so we actually use the technology from the HeartMath Institute. And so that provides us, when we have our own special group in the app that we log into, and that tells us our individual score. It tells us our group coherence average score of what we're all getting together at the same time. And then it also tells us the global coherence score of all the people around the world that are also tuning in
at that moment.
And we always have a little bit of a competition because we always beat the global score and we get really excited.
Right.
Well, I don't think anyone else globally is doing it in the same way as we are.
No,
I think it's individual people tuning in. So it's just really very cool to see the power of the collective.
And, you know, I think that the other piece that's so powerful for us is this collective piece. You know, we always say our frequency is our activism. And at a time this is the most incredible time in the world to be alive, you know, with such energy coming in and such light and such, it really is a time for activism. But for us, it's not about standing on a street corner and petitioning government. It's actually our hearts and our light. And so when we come together as a big group of people, and, you know, our community is exponentially growing, and, you know, our vision is 1,000 boomies. And, you know, we've seen studies that when 1,000 monks come together and they meditate on peace, you know, crime rates in Detroit drop to 0 for that whole period of time. Imagine being part of a collective network of people doing this work every day, where this is how we shift humanity into peace. This is how we shift one heart at a time. We don't need to do anything else other than going within and looking after our own frequency and our own hearts. And the miracle of that is that everything then comes into alignment. And that's when the beauty of life starts to really unfold and it becomes really magical.
Yeah, it does. Life does, yeah.
So
I
if
know.
anyone watching this is feeling like this might resonate for you, we would love to have you in our community. And I think you feel free to reach out to me on Messenger even. I think our socials, Colors very beautifully put our socials in the post. So we would very welcome, if you're looking for a community to do this work with and some support, we would love to have you. And, we have a whole plethora of people in our community. We have people who are just starting out their journey.
Yeah.
We have 2 of my spiritual mentors have completed our program and in our community, which just has blown me away. But, we have people of all walks of life, our youngest person is 18. The oldest person in our community is 74. From all over the globe. We do have a network of people here in Australia, but we are global. And this is really a really profound way to just feel connected to a really beautiful group of heart-centered people who are here to just support each other to be the best versions of themselves that they can.
Yeah.
And we show up in the boom rooms. If you're struggling, then you come into the boom rooms and, allow the frequency of the group to shift your heart. And if you're feeling amazing, you come into the boom rooms to elevate it. Yeah, to share your love and to give back.
Yeah.
It's a really beautiful thing.
You can turn up in your pajamas.
We do turn up in our pajamas.
We take everyone however they come.
Yeah.
And it's
Beautiful.
it's just an absolutely, I think it blows me away every single time. Like, whether or not it's just one of our simple practices or one of our circle of coherence, like the way our community come together to support one another. In all my years in the field of life, I've never seen anything like that. And it's just been really, I'm just very, very grateful and feel very, very blessed to be part of it.
Yeah, awesome. It reminds me of often when I do biofield tuning, so often when I'm tuning a group, it's so very cool to be sending that coherent frequency into everybody, right? And then I tune into the ethers or turn into the group, right? The power, like you said, the power of connecting with that of everybody as we become coherent together, right? With the tuning forks and stuff. It's just an amazing feeling and to know that we can all do that, right?
Yeah.
That's right. It's about attuning to the divine intelligence and the power that already exists within us. We don't need anything outside of us to heal. It's all within us.
Right.
Yeah,
beautiful. All right. Well, let's see. We kind of talked. Is there any one last thing you'd like to say or anything before we go?
No, I just want to thank you, Carla, for this beautiful opportunity, and thank you to the people that have tuned in and your questions in the chat. And for those of you who are yet to watch the recording, we see you, we honor you, and
as you say, if this resonates, we can't wait to see your beautiful heart and your beautiful soul in our community.
All right. Very good. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for watching. We'll catch you next time. And if Ali and Alicia, if you'd like to hang on just a second afterwards here, we could say goodbye there. So we'll talk to y'all next time.